What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined by my brother and the other host of this show, Nick. And Nick, what's up? Season's over. We're getting into some free agent stuff. The draft is coming up. But first and most importantly, how are you?
I'm great, man. I watched my St. Louis Battlehawks come back in a crazy XFL win the other day. Have you watched any of it? Have you been able to?
Yeah, I tried. I couldn't really get invested into any of it. I think that there's a couple of players like Prohl for the Battlehawks there's some good storylines going back to the greatest show on turf, and his dad is a coach of the team. Like, that's all really interesting to me. But I think outside of that, I can't dig too deep into it. But I do think that considering it's a developmental league for the NFL now, I feel like there's going to be more intrigue, right? If you're not going to be able to assign a team to a specific city because there's only going to be 12 teams in the XFL or so. But considering it's just another pool of players for, to develop and get to the next level, I think there's some cool storylines, and it's all, sponsored by The Rock. So I'm a fan.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm going to add is after you convince your significant other to watch football all year round, or like not all year, but like throughout the course of a season and Sundays or football days and what have you, you get to the XFL and I turned it on and she was just like, there's no way there's football on right now. I'm not watching this, which is something I had not have thought of.
Yeah. My in-laws had the same question, and they were over yesterday. They were like, why is there football on right now? Like, what is this? Is this the UFL, USFL? Like, is it college? Nobody even knows what the hell it is. But considering it is a developmental league for the NFL, I think there will be eyeballs on it. And I think for what it is, it's a decent product. It's never going to be NFL level product, but I think it's decent.
It's fun. It's cool. It's
right.
It's nice to have something else on TV to kind of, and it's now it being related to the NFL. It's definitely interesting because you can pinpoint people. So, it's fun. It's good to have.
Yeah, it's fun. But so the league year is beginning March 15th. And the combine is next Tuesday, February 28th. So this is all starting very, very quickly. The season is all right around the corner. So this episode is going to be focused specifically on the Rams and who they should start prioritizing in terms of unrestricted free agents, as they have about 2.5 weeks or so to make up their minds on who they're going to retain, restructure, extend, etc. Right. So we're going to cover off on all of that over the next few weeks, plus the coaching staff being finalized as the week progresses, and then everything draft related mixed in. With the draft only a couple of months away. But first, please like and subscribe. Nick, I know you appreciated that.
It's been a while since you dropped that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we need the support. We want the support. I think we're building up the channel. We're going to have a little bit more of a consistent stream between the two of us. Hopefully we'll have guests on coming up. We're going to do some good coverage as the off season progresses. So I think this one is going to be fun. It's going to be jam-packed with going back to last year in terms of how everything kind of shook out with the league year starting on March 15th and some things happening, a couple of days beforehand, getting signals and signs that, the team is going to be drastically different year over year. And that's just kind of what happens in these situations. But last year, Nick, just going back, we're going to go to last year and then we're going to go to this year in terms of unrestricted free agents and who we like to potentially come back. So last year, the day before the league year started, it was Monday, March 14th. Austin Corbett signed with the Panthers. Coleman Shelton re-signed to a 2-year deal. And then Noteboom re-signed that 3-year, $40 million contract. And Brian Allen also re-signed a 3-year, $24 million contract. So there was feelings that Whitworth was going to retire. You were losing Austin Corbett. I think Rob Havenstein was an unrestricted free agent at one point last year. Around that time. So there was some consideration that you could potentially lose 3 offensive linemen. So you wanted to kind of bolster up, what you did have in-house already. And I think they did a decent job that, although it didn't unfold the way that they wanted to. Obo also on the same day that Whitworth retired, 1-year deal with the Texans. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent coming up. Sebastian Joseph Day signed a 3-year deal, $24 million with the Chargers. And then Nick Hecker was released. And Rams fans all across the country were very, very upset in losing one of the most seasoned veterans in Hecker. And it was tough, Nick. I remember going back, it was like, we're going to lose Hecker. We could potentially lose Robert Woods. Like, it was a very uneasy feeling at the time.
I remember it a little different. I remember there being kind of like a Hecker, like happy send off, like in both
Yeah.
facets, where it was like, Hecker, see you later. Like, thank you for everything that you did. St. Louis to LA, you were amazing. But also kind of being at the point where we were like, we need to bring somebody in that can pin these guys back a little further, and he definitely regressed. But you know what? Let's give it up to the Panthers for a little bit with like Austin and Johnny, getting both of them. You know, they went flea market shopping with the Rams, and they, you know, established like a pretty solid core. Like they're one of the teams next year that could really, you know, make like have like an established team and be a division leader, especially in that NFC South, which is just horrible. So while we were kind of happy to send these guys off, they certainly had some pretty big roles in their team. And next year, I would see that being the same, particularly Austin, who was phenomenal for them.
Yeah, I think he actually tore his ACL in the last game of the season. So I don't know if he's going to be able to come back in time. I think he's going to have one of those delayed starts, which sucks. I mean, but I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of going back to 2019 when you kind of had to rebuild the offensive line from scratch. And they tried to do it. They tried to do some patchwork, some internal work with Coleman Shelton and Joe Noteboom seemingly becoming the future left tackle, and then Brian Allen. But it doesn't always unfold that way. And yeah, now the Panthers with Thomas Brown, who we're going to talk about, you know, a little bit later on in the episode, he goes and becomes their offensive coordinator. You got Frank Reich over there, you know, a top pick. So they're going to be fun to keep an eye on. And Morgan Fox is another guy who's going to be an unrestricted free agent coming up. So there's a lot of ties in terms of what's going on with the Panthers. So that same day, Johnny Hecker was released. Johnny Munt, he went with Wes Phillips and Kevin O'Connell, 2-year deal, $2.4 million with the Vikings. Nobody was upset about that, but you figured, you know, there was going to be some movement there. Darius Williams, 3-year deal, $30 million contract with $18 million guaranteed with the Jags. And then the big one on that day. So the first day into the league year was Von Miller signing a 6-year, $120 million contract with the Bills. So you're kind of getting pulled apart at that point. You lose some of your core veteran leadership in Corbett and Whitworth and Hacker and Von Miller. And, you know, you have to kind of reprioritize at that time. And then you got to, you know, you get to the next day and you're like, what can I do? Is there another guy that we could bring in and, you know, continue the patchwork? Maybe there's some other wide receivers in a couple of days coming up who could be leaving the Rams for another venture. Let's sign Allen Robinson, 4 years, $46 million, 30.7 guaranteed. And then a couple of days later, you lose Robert Woods. And then you feel like you have to extend Matthew Stafford. And that was a dramatic offseason coming off of the Super Bowl. And it was a tough pill for a lot of Rams fans to swallow. The Stafford extension was 4 years, up to $160 million, $60 million in guaranteed money and signings, $130 million in total guarantees. They lowered his cap number from $23 million to $13.5 million, which is a $9.5 million savings, which made his cap hit a little bit more manageable in years to come. They signed Brandon Powell, and then Robert Woods, Nick, I talked about, just traded away, 6th-round pick. It was considered to be purely financial. It was a cash flow issue, as the great Mr. Wonderful says. So, yeah, a lot of bullets at that time.
Yeah. It definitely didn't feel like that. I think we were all just riding high from
That's exactly why.
Yeah, from the thrill of the hat that I'm wearing right now, the Super Bowl champs hat. It just felt like nothing could really bring us down. I mean, losing Von Miller and Robert Woods in like kind of like one foul swoop is kind of I didn't realize how much that was going to hurt. And I remember thinking the Von Miller thing, like it worked exceptionally well for when it did, and he was kind of hurt in Denver, and we kind of got him where like he got his injury of the season out of the way. And then as soon as the Bills lost him, it felt like that's when their Super Bowl run ended, in my opinion. He was very necessary to what that team had in mind for their offseason, and him not being there completely shut it all down. And then Robert Woods, all of us just expected Allen Robinson to be exactly what Robert Woods was, and it wasn't even close. Like, there's a reason he was my favorite Ram for all those years. And He was fine in Tennessee, but it does feel like he definitely didn't hit his limits. I mean, and that was a kind of a crappy situation with Tannehill, and then he's kind of off and on the field that year, so he didn't really have a chance to really spark. But they missed the playoffs and everything. It would be interesting to see them bring somebody similar to him back in, or if we're just going to kind of fall in on the Allen Robinson train again in 2023.
So the Allen Robinson train is really, really interesting. So he signed a 3-year, $46.5 million contract, as I mentioned. He ended up being a $4.3 million cap hit last year when he was put on injured reserve, which I think lowered his overall cap hit in terms of total year. But then Robinson was an $18 million cap hit this upcoming season. So you have to think between Wagner, who also has a massive rise. It's $10 million incremental year over year in terms of a cap hit. Right, it was $2.5 million last year. It's $12.75 million this year. Robinson's another guy, goes from $4.3 to $18 million against your cap this year. So Nick, whether you like him or not, I think the reality of the situation is you're going to potentially have to restructure one of those two new guys. So that's what makes it really difficult. If you restructure Robinson, then you're kind of alluding to the fact that he's going to be a part of the future, or you can cut your losses and trade him or cut him or whatever makes the most sense towards your cap.
Right. And then there's the OBJ of it all, like potentially bringing him back.
Yeah.
And what that would mean to Robinson and the role that he would kind of take on. And, when you got people like Van Jefferson and Brandon Ayuk that are kind of like, pulling at strings to get minutes, and you got all these guys in the room. Maybe they don't go after OBJ.
Powell, still, you mean, right? Not Ayuk, Powell.
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
Powell. Brandon Powell.
Ayuk may be a free agent this year, but no, I know you're talking about Powell.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just.
No, you're good. Keep going. I liked where you were going. Keep going with it.
It feels like there's too many guys on this team right now, and Robinson doesn't really have a home where all those other guys, and particularly OBJ, it just makes more sense for him to kind of come back. I mean, to me, he feels like a Los Angeles Ram more than anything else.
That's the way I feel about him too.
Like maybe a Buffalo Bill if Stephon Diggs continues to like kind of be upset at the situation that he's in, like, whether that's public or not public. It seemed like towards the end of that Bills run, he was really upset. So
yeah, there was.
He's a high caliber. OBJ's a high caliber guy. I don't really care what anybody else has to say. I know.
Well, he is. That's the fact of the matter. And he was, there was OBJ drama last year. But this time last year, going all the way back, we were like, is OBJ going to resign? Ended up being a conversation that extended over the full calendar year, which was, tough for a lot of fans. I think by the end of the drama, a lot of them were kind of fatigued by the Odell Beckham Jr. news. It was like, all right, enough already. Like, who are you going to sign with? You're going to come back for the playoffs. And now you kind of got that conversation happening all over again in tandem with the Rams, what they could potentially do with Allen Robinson. And then last year, too, there was also emphasis on Aaron Donald's contract situation. They were talking about getting McVay and Snead, their extensions done full term, which was something I don't think they came into conclusion to until like March. I'm not sure exactly when, but there was a lot of stuff going on last year. And you can go, OBJ over Robinson, or you talk about Bobby Wagner and where you see where you feel like he's going to fit over the next 2-3 years. And there's a lot of pieces still that you're evaluating from this point last year to see how they paid off at this point this year and moving forward. And now this year, there's 18 unrestricted free agents. It's, who do you even prioritize at this point? And you look back at last year, you re-signed Coleman Shelton, you re-signed Joe Newcomb and Brian Allen. And outside of that, you kind of went out of house. You went Allen Robinson, you went Bobby Wagner. So it's going to be difficult to, I think, prioritize some of these guys, right? Matt Gay, Ashawn Robinson, Greg Gaines, Nick Scott, Brandon Powell, Baker Mayfield, Coleman Shelton, David Edwards, Taylor Rapp, David Long, Traven Howard, Malcolm Brown, Riley Dixon, Matt Orzech, Ode Aboshi, Ty Nsekhe, and Matt Sikora. That's all 18. Nick. Wow. So how do we even begin prioritizing that list?
Matt Gay, number one, I think should be the top priority.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, that guy, he was lights out in the playoff run last year. He was lights out this year. They rely on him a lot. A lot of the times I feel like the Rams are setting up for like a 54 or like a 45 like, nothing that's a guarantee for most kickers in the league. And Matt Gay has continued to show that he is of the top caliber, and that's somebody that you need. So I would say work on Matt Gay first. I mean, you kind of have it highlighted here. You have all the, main guys with the star next to him. Gay, Robinson, Gaines, Nick Scott, Powell. And then from there, I think you can kind of figure out the rest. Honestly, that's my call. Those are the names that kind of come to my head. Powell would be one where if you want to, bring back OBJ and hopefully restructure Robinson, then I could see you losing him. But I felt like there's just so much untapped potential with him.
Well, there is. And I think what's going to be tough is you have Matt Gay, Brandon Powell, Riley Dixon, and Matt Orzech, all as free agents. So that's your punter, your long snapper, your punt returner, and your kicker. So I think the direction of where they're going to go with the special teams coach, that's going to be a big determining factor. I know it was something that Jordan was writing about a month ago or so, how the special teams coordinator could be a deciding factor on who you're going to bring in terms of a new punter, a new long snapper. Jake McQuaid, former Ram, is an unrestricted free agent. Maybe you tie some ties back. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think Brandon Powell needs to be a priority, and Matt Gay. Like, considering Matt Gay's statistics, he's been nearly perfect for 2 straight years. Like, he's one guy you absolutely have to prioritize. And Brandon Powell has been the only spark seemingly on punt returns, on kick returns, and also too as a ball carrier on the offensive side of the ball. He feels like kind of like a gadget player that you would like to have in your offense if you can afford him. Problem is he's coming off of a 1-year deal, right? So he was kind of on that 1-year prove it deal already. So is he going to go look to sign with somebody else, considering he's already had his year with the Rams on bonus time? So that's the special teams unit, right? And then you go into Ashawn and Greg Gaines. Like, are you going to be able to keep both of those guys? I think the reality is you probably keep one, right?
Yeah.
That's what's going to be tough. You go,
and it's like, I don't know. I don't know who I would out of those two. Like, you could argue that Gaines has more. He's got less miles on his tires, but Robinson probably a bigger impact. So that's kind of, it's like, which way do you want to lean? Do you want to lean with longevity, or do you want to lean with like windows open? Because that's kind of the big question right now.
That's what's so difficult about it is I think Ashawn is the better run stopper, but as a nose tackle, like Ashawn can play 3 tech, but like Gaines as a true nose tackle, I think and he kind of like has the personality and identity as a Ram, right? Like, I feel like that would be somebody that I would see a little pain, going elsewhere, because it felt like his personality and a lot of his growth came from Eric Henderson and the development of him as a player within the Rams' organization. Like, we've seen a lot of those kind of guys go already. Like, Ashawn was a guy that we brought in, but Gaines is a homegrown Los Angeles Ram. Yeah. Right. So like, I would like to see him come back on a cheaper 2-year deal where he can hang around for a couple more years. Ashawn Robinson, I think, is just the problem with him is he's going to command a lot of money in the open market. And I think Gaines is going to be less of a priority. And also, like, remember the game where Aaron Donald was hurt and Greg Gaines was taking on double teams with like a torn bicep tendon and was, he was like the face of the defensive front. Like, that's not a guy that I want to see leave. Although I think the reality of the situation is if you got to prioritize some other guys, like, you're not going to pay a safety. Maybe Nick Scott somehow sneaks in, but you're probably not going to pay the safeties. You're not going to pay Rapp. Troy Smith is going to be really difficult to re-sign. I think the whole defensive back grouping is tough. But yeah, Greg Gaines, I think, is that homegrown Los Angeles Ram that I would want to see them bring back.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Gaines, you just have more of a higher ceiling, like, to be good for like 3 to 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he strikes me as the kind of guy where it's like you're driving down the 405 or something. It's like, buy Rams tickets. Like, he's one of those like kind of marquee people that you can kind of pitch it around where it's like him and Aaron Donald together were kind of like a really good pairing. And, he's been playing next to Donald and like learning from him. So I feel like he's probably taken a lot of that knowledge and used it to kind of, help him advance. Robinson, yeah, it does feel like he can walk and the market would be higher. So maybe it would be kind of like a thank you situation where it's like, we know you're going to get, find your bag somewhere else. So
right. Yeah.
To me, it's like if you're going to get one of them, like you don't get both of them and then miss out on Nick Scott, like,
Yeah, right.
like you kind of need like the full like scope of the roster. So we'll see. We'll see how it lays out. I do just want to go back to the Stafford situation one more time.
What, the contract extension?
Yeah, because I don't think I realized that even happened throughout the midst of it all. Like how much of a cap hit he's kind of taken on the team. Are we still paying portions of Goff's contract, or is that completely
No,
gone?
that was done last year.
Okay, all right.
I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure.
It's not. I think this past year was the last year that
Yeah.
they were paying him. So I guess it's okay now that like Stafford's making that much. I read something today. How about this? He's the only quarterback in Super Bowl history to throw 3 touchdowns and not be awarded the MVP.
I believe it.
So maybe a little like I think people are ready to kind of shoo him off as like not a top 10 quarterback.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's happening already.
Yeah.
You see these top 10 lists, and you can go Mahomes and Lamar and Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, and you go all the way down that list, and then maybe just maybe Matthew Stafford is number 10.
It's really funny because right now it seems like the list that I'm seeing, it's like it's him or it's Goff sneaking in there, and it's like one or the other, and I'm like that's kind of cute. I mean, Stafford's definitely a little older now, but I think he's got a lot of like at least 2-3 more years on this team.
Yeah.
Which is what I hope we have for McVay, but who knows? I just don't want to play the Aaron Rodgers circus every year where it's like we have an off year, is McVay going to leave?
Yeah, and that's the tough part. It's like last year was the carousel of, are you going to extend Sean McVay? Are you going to pay Aaron Donald? And then this past year was, is Sean McVay going to retire? Is he going to be in Thailand with Cliff Kingsbury? Like, what's happening? And then, that's the way that and then there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. Like once the league year starts in 2.5 weeks, like if Matt Gay and Brandon Powell aren't re-signed immediately, those are 2 special teams pieces that definitely command some money in the open market. Powell was a guy who was looking to earn it. Like we didn't even talk about Baker Mayfield. Like Mayfield's another guy that we would love to have back, but there's going to be other teams that are going to be interested in his services, considering how well he was able to pick up on the Rams' offense. And maybe, just maybe, they felt like there was a scheme that could fit Baker Mayfield and the way that he performs and what he prefers in the offense and some of the routes and schemes that he is relying on as a quarterback. So that's what's going to be fun. It's like, where's Baker Mayfield going to go? And Taylor Rapp, David Long, like those are 2 guys that you're not prioritizing bringing back. But David Edwards is a Super Bowl winning left guard. Like I'm going to have a hard time letting him walk away.
Yeah. I'll say this about Baker. I think he would have won a starting job if he won 2 more games as a Ram, because it was kind of like on again, off again with him. It's like one week he's helping put up 54 points against the Broncos, like best defense ever, and the next he's like losing to a divisional rival. And it's like where, like what? It's like,
right.
Some games he's really good. Some games he's leading the greatest comeback of the season last year. And then others, it's like he's, what we saw from him on the Panthers. So, which is kind of exactly the right kind of spot we wanted to grab him at, where it's like, hey, learn under Stafford for a year, like continue, like you're having fun right now. Let's continue to have fun. Like as he, in his words, like sign this team-friendly deal. Like Stafford's getting older. I don't know how you want to pitch it to him, where it's like you could get some starts here or there. But yeah, I mean, he's not a starter. I don't think he's one of the 32 best players at the position right
Baker,
now.
I mean, I think a big part of that move, going back to keeping him away from San Francisco and keeping them out of contention with the quarterback, I think that was the move. Let's bring in Baker Mayfield.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's keep him away from San Francisco. We know that their depth chart is short, and we can have him come in and he could win us a couple of games. It makes us all look good. It makes everybody in the room feel better about themselves, because now we're winning a couple games, and this is kind of like a fun storyline of a player that flew in 48 hours ago and now is coming in, learned the offense so quickly and could put everything together. So yeah, Baker Mayfield is like I mentioned, he's a fun one. And I wouldn't mind seeing him go. If he's going to go be a backup somewhere else, that's fine. But if if he is going to be a backup and he settles on that, I would like it to be back with the Rams. I think we could all agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that's his thought process right now too, where it's like if I'm going to back up anywhere, it's probably easier for me just to stay put.
Right.
And I think you're right too. Now that Purdy mania has officially run its course, and like they needed somebody else on that team. I'm sorry, Brock Purdy. Like I think if Baker Mayfield's in there, then he gets injured in that Eagles game, hypothetically. Then you have Purdy on the depth chart come in and throw some crazy passes or like lead them to victory or something. But after Brock Purdy, you had literally zero. Yeah. And I guess you just assumed that there wasn't going to be a situation where he could ever go down.
Yeah. So, yeah. And just to not get it twisted, we're not praising the 49ers in any regard. We both hate the 49ers. Just
I mean, we hate them, but we also respect them. I mean, what is the line from Anchorman where Mantooth or whatever Vince Vaughn's character's name is?
The second one?
Yeah. No, the first one. Where he's like, God damn it, Ron Burgundy, I hate you. But God, I respect you. Something like that.
Yeah. I don't even respect them anymore.
No.
I don't. I have no respect. After the way that they bitched and moaned after the NFC Championship.
Yeah, that was bad.
That was pathetic. I think that was like
the
way that the way that they bring themselves to play against us is obnoxious, and it is minorly respectable. Give them a little bit of credit. But I mean, like the way that they acted in front of the media on Radio Row before the Super Bowl after that Eagles loss, it was just that's like the worst way that you could represent your organization is just by talking about what could have happened and all these hypothetical situations. It just really pissed me off. So
I know. And then
to me, there's not
like 2 weeks later when the Eagles lose and they are like the ultimate class act. And it's just like, come on, Niners.
Right. That was like a lesson on how to act after you lose.
Yeah. Like it was insane.
Yep. So, okay, let's wrap up. I'm going to give you my top 5. Then you give your top 5.
Okay.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Matt Gay.
Okay.
Greg Gaines, David Edwards, Baker Mayfield.
Oh.
And Coleman Shelton.
Nick Scott is missing?
Yeah, no, they don't pay safeties. They just don't. They don't do it. I don't think they're going to. And he's another guy. He's going to command a bag elsewhere. Let him go have it. He earned it. He worked his way all the way up.
I'm tempted to throw Malcolm Brown in here, but I'm not going
to. Don't you dare.
All right, I got it right here. In order, I think our 1 and 2 are exactly the same. Gay, Gaines, and then I'm going to go Scott, just because he like the way he stepped up in the Super Bowl.
I get it, totally.
Like that was unheard of. Prior running back to just completely changing his whole regime is just so cool. Shelton, and then at 5, I also have Mayfield because I cannot watch. I can't watch the Wolf on Wall Street.
No, I get it.
Lineup at QB1.
And I feel like there was watching quarterbacks in the XFL that are more talented than Wolford and Perkins. Nothing against them. I just feel like you could upgrade the position if Stafford gets hurt again.
Ben DiNucci, who's starting right now for the Seattle Sea Dragons, is about 10 times the player.
Yeah, as a backup quarterback. That's what 10 times. It's a long stretch. I can't stand Ben DiNucci. But yeah, at least he's some pies on. But so you went Coleman Shelton over David Edwards. Interesting. I understand why, though, because he was a player that was actually around this past year, and Edwards was so banged up that really couldn't stay on the field. So, that the best ability is durability sometimes, and Coleman Shelton definitely provides that. Plus, he's extremely versatile. He can play center, guard, and I think that's something you want to have on your depth chart. So that's why he was on my list too.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we got in terms of unrestricted free agents. There were a couple of things that I wanted to call out just because I know we were talking about Robinson and Wagner's contract. I think when you look in terms of what the Rams are going to do in terms of bringing in an unrestricted free agent or an outside player, you look at Robinson's 3-year, $46.5 million contract. Wagner came in at 5 years, $50 million in terms of his contract. And I would expect the Rams, if they're going to make some sort of splashy signing, it would be within the range of those two contracts. So expect like 4 years, 45 to 48 million for maybe like a top tier edge rusher is kind of where my head's going. And then there's some fun players on this unrestricted free agents list. Like if you're all the way stuck at the top, you're going to see a lot of quarterbacks. But if you scroll down, there's some fun former Rams like Ndamukong Suh, Obo, Fowler, Littleton, Rodney McLeod, Jake McQuaid, Morgan Fox. Like you could probably kick the tires on one of those guys. I'm not saying you're going to bring in Obo and he's going to be the resurrection at the edge position, but there's some names on this list. And I think with Robinson being a $4.3 million cap hit last year, Wagner being a $2.5 million cap hit last year, the difference in them is going up to $18 million and $12.75 million. Like one of those guys are going to have to be restructured. Keep your eyes peeled for players just getting restructured just to be able to create a little bit more cap space for the re-signings, for if you're going to bring in another high caliber player. So keep your eyes on that. Patrick Peterson's a name that I was looking at just at the bottom of this list that I think is interesting. Let me load all positions real quick because I know there were some others. I know we were talking about, like, they're guys at the top. Orlando Brown, we talked about him in one episode. There's Marcus Peters. There's Fletcher Cox. There's Robert Quinn. There's Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Yannick Ngakoue. I think Ngakoue is my guy, Nick. I think if I'm going to go top tier edge rusher, I'm going Yannick Ngakoue. Although he's fallen off a little bit, but he would be one of those guys that falls within the range of Wagner and Allen Robinson.
So, yeah, I'm thinking we bring in Fletcher Cox, and before the game, McVay's backstage, and he's like, "I need Cox," and he sees him up against the the locker, and Aaron Donald stops him, and he says, Fletcher Cox needs to think about his whole life before he performs. Little Dewey Cox reference there for everybody on this Monday.
I knew you were going Dewey Cox. I just didn't know.
I mean, honestly, though, Fletcher Cox would be like huge to what this team has to offer. I mean, I don't know. He's kind of older, but the Eagles are going to want to bring him back, or maybe he goes to the Cardinals with Gannon. With
Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, so
that's a good call.
That would be. Bringing somebody like that in, I think, would cement me feeling very strong about the defense and what Raheem's going to bring back to it.
Top tier pass rusher, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like if you're going to lose people like Ramsey, which we talked about last time, who also publicly came out and said he's not getting cut, but he may get traded. He said it's a maybe. So we don't know really what's going to happen. So. And the upgrading on defense, especially on the front, when you lose somebody like Ramsey, would be pretty important.
Yep. Yeah. I think that that's going to be a position you're going to have to do a hell of a lot to upgrade, or at least kind of get back to starting base, right? If you lose a player of that caliber. But then, like on the other side of him, we've talked about, is there another guy that you could bring in? Because if you don't bring back Long, you don't bring back Troy Hill, Robert Rochelle can't even play special teams. So where is your depth there? Are you going to go Durant? You're going to go Kendrick? What does your second, third level of your defense look like outside of Wagner, outside of Ramsey? Is it Russ Yeast? Is it Quentin Lake? Like there's you're going to look to potentially fill some of those things. And then like if you lose Greg Gaines, or you lose Ashawn Robinson, you're going to look to bring in somebody that's cheap, like a Shai Tuttle or a Nathan Shepard from the Jets, like guys that you could bring in for a couple of $1 million. The way that Howie Roseman and the Eagles did this previous year, a couple of one-year stopgap deals, like Kaiser White was a one-year deal. There were Robert Quinn and Ndamukong Suh and some of these other players that you can kind of bolster up and try to make one last run at. I think that's going to be some of the spaces that they have to play in, unfortunately, because there's only so much money that can go around. So
I'll say this about Ndamukong Suh. He was sitting ready for someone to take him all season. And I'm sure he got offers all year. I don't know if he wants to do a full year.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. He's not. I just listed off former Rams that you could potentially.
Yeah, I think he's somebody that's like, oh, you lost somebody, and it's January, or it's like late December, January. Like, okay, bring me in. Like he's playing in that Super Bowl last year. Eagles kind of found him when one of their other guys went down. So I think he's probably comfortable with that. He probably doesn't want to play a full season.
I don't think he does either.
Yeah, so
I would agree with you.
He's somebody I would scratch off the list, but I hear you.
There's some other fun names. Like you could look at
Marcus Peters is kind of fun.
Yeah, Marcus Peters is a fun name. James Bradbury is a really fun name. Eli Apple. Him and Cooper Kupp at practice would be really fun. Sean Bunting from Tampa Bay. That would be one that I would look at. Byron Murphy from Arizona, another guy that we've kind of taken advantage of over the past couple of years, but can work in the right scheme. There's a lot of options in terms of defensive backs. You can go all the way to edge rusher. You could look at a handful of guys that are not going to cost you an arm and a leg that you could potentially bring in for a couple of seasons versus like a Yannick Ngakoue who's looking for another 4 to 5 year deal. So that's kind of the range where a lot of these big guys are going to play. And then, Nick, outside of that, some other news. I think the coaching search. I know we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks. The coaching search is finally going to come to an end by the end of this week. I'm excited to see how everything is going to be finalized. Obviously lost Thomas Brown to Carolina, as we unfortunately kind of predicted.
Carolina, man, just, taking all these Rams from every aspect, defense, offense, coaching. Carolina's like, oh yeah, I'll take that guy.
I'll tell you the three. Yeah, the three that are very, very much invested in Rams' staff and former Rams' players. It's the Seahawks, it's the Panthers, and it is the Chargers.
Yeah,
Chargers. They want everything to do with the previous success that the Rams have had. Greg Olsen, poached by the Seahawks, second time in 5 years that he's been poached. He was taken away from the Rams. I think it was in 19. He's taken away again. He was a senior offensive assistant. Nick, help me understand how a quarterback's coach for the Seahawks is a promotion over a senior offensive assistant with the Rams.
I mean, it's not. I would just think maybe he felt like he was like pigeonholed in the situation that he was in. I don't know.
I guess.
Change of scenery.
I guess. I feel like a senior offensive assistant to Sean McVay is a fun job. I mean, unless you're thinking like he's been an offense coordinator 6 times in his career. Like, why? Unless he's going to go, the Seahawks are going to go get like a C.J. Stroud or a Bryce Young and trade up in the draft and be able to develop the next top quarterback. You're going there for Geno. You're going to go coach the quarterbacks for Geno versus working with Stafford and McVay and Cooper Kupp. That sounds nuts. But to me, there's maybe a cliffhanger.
There's a lot of young. I mean, that Seahawks team had a great draft. So yeah, maybe there is thoughts of him potentially of them drafting a quarterback if Geno doesn't, excel again this year.
I think they would. I think that's.
He had a career year, and what they got 9 wins.
Yeah.
Finally made it to the playoffs and they lost. Like everybody wants to talk about how impressive Seattle is. Like when the expectations are so low, yeah, that's impressive. But like, grand scheme of things, they lost to somebody that they get to play in division twice a year in the playoffs. So
right.
Like that's the team you want, and you go out there and you lose. So not that impressive.
No, never. I haven't been impressed with Seattle in the last 3 or 4 years. Really, it's been kind of the same song and dance. Although last year, there was a resurgence with Geno and a West Coast high volume completion offense that has a little bit of a complement of a run game with a young rookie. And I think they drafted, like you mentioned, Nick, the Seahawks drafted so well. And they're a good example of somebody that you'd want to emulate in terms of last couple of years, how they drafted. Tariq Woolen next to Jalen Ramsey would be my favorite thing in the entire world. And that's what I was hoping that Kendrick or Durant was going to be. And unfortunately, you just, they're not there yet. So a lot of development happening within the Rams' secondary. And that's all we got for you today.
Yeah. And one last thing, do not forget to bet on the XFL at Bet Online. Live betting, free contests, giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports events, whether that's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf. And hopefully the XFL. I don't know if that's on there or not, honestly. But head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use our promo code BLEAV. Believe in yourself, and you'll be world champs. You're going to receive your free rewards if you use BLEAV. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Quite possibly the best online promo I've ever heard. As you
tied in yourself, and you'll be world champs.
Tied in with the Sean McVay line.
Yes, I knew it.
You're the winner of the day.
Thank you
for that.
Also saw Ant-Man Quantumania. Have to talk about it. I loved it. It looks like they've gone full wacky. It was a really fun movie. Go check it out.
I heard it was dark. Like the coloring was dark.
It is dark, but I thought it was, honestly, it was really funny. It was a huge risk. It was a big swing, and I really enjoyed it.
Hey, Marvel is always great. I mean, they've done great. I don't know if people are talking about how they've fallen off or the movie production isn't the same as it's been. I'm sure that I would watch it and I would enjoy it the same way that you did. Plus, I love Paul Rudd. So,
yeah, he's in everything.
Yeah, he could. What can he do?
I mean, Friends, Anchorman, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Clueless. Like that list is endless. Paul Rudd could play a praying mantis. You know what I mean? It's insane.
Cheers to that. Thanks for listening, guys. We love you.
Cheers.
Talk to you in a couple days. Peace.